When I told my mill I was going back to my hometown to give birth. By all means, go back. I don't want to see your face. I was delighted from the bottom of my heart as I was waiting for those words. You won't have to see me anymore, rest assured. What? I am Emily, about to turn 28. My mother died from illness when I was only 2. Since my father, a busy man, ran a clothing company with a 100-year-old tradition, I was looked after by my grandmother as he worked. My father was very strict, and I lived my life just as he told me to. Perhaps because of that, I had never dated a man, but I had given up, thinking it was destiny. After graduating from college, I worked briefly as my father's secretary at his company, but he said it was hard for him to work together and forced me to quit. I didn't get a job after that, because my father strongly stated that I don't need to work. However, my friends from university got jobs and started dating and getting married one after another, so I wanted to work too. I told my father one night, "Dad, can I work?" "No." He said one word without asking for a reason. "Why not?" "Because you don't need to work. But I also need to go out into society and gain more experience." "Emily, don't talk back." "I'm not talking back. I'm not saying anything wrong. You should just stay home, Emily." "If you say that, I'll leave home. I'll leave home and go to work from there." "Emily, stop it." "No. I'm an adult. I won't always do as you say." I cried and left the place. Even in my room I cried for a long time. After a while, I called my friend from college, Lisa. "Can I come to your house now?" "Sure, but what's wrong? And can you go out at this time?" "I can't right now, but I'll figure it out. Can I stay at your place for a while?" Lisa's apartment was a luxury condominium gifted by her parents, boasting 3 rooms. "Seems like something's up." "That's fine, just be careful on your way here." Quietly, I pulled out my suitcase, packed my belongings and stealthily left the house so as not to alert my father. I left a note on my desk stating that I was going to stay with a friend. Once outside, I hailed a taxi and headed towards Lisa's apartment. Upon arriving at Lisa's apartment, I was greeted with my favorite coffee that she had prepared. "Thank you, Lisa." "What's going on, Emily?" I explained everything about the argument with my father and my subsequent departure from home. "That's awful, Emily. You've had no freedom at all." Her words brought tears to my eyes once again. "Until now, I did everything my father said and thinking it was normal. But suddenly, I've started craving my own freedom." "That's completely normal. It's strange that your father doesn't allow you to work. I'd like to meet many people and have a good time too." "So does your dad know you're here?" "I left a note saying I was going to a friend's place, but he doesn't know any of my friends. He might be frantically searching for you right now." "Maybe." "It's late now. Shall we go to bed?" "Yeah, I am really tired." Lisa prepared a separate room for me to sleep in. The next day, Lisa left for work. When I checked my phone, I saw about 10 missed calls from my dad. I felt sorry for him and sent him an email to assure him not to worry. In the evening, after Lisa finished work, she called me. "I'm going out for a drink, why don't you join us?" Having little experience with social drinking, I was excited about going out. When I arrived at the location Lisa mentioned, I found her waiting with 2 men. "Sorry for keeping you waiting." "So, who are these gentlemen?" Pointing to the shorter man, Lisa said. "This is my boyfriend. And the tall guy over there, he's single and ready to mingle." The tall man introduced himself with a refreshing smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm Max, pleased to make your acquaintance." Oh, nice to meet you, I'm Emily. That's how our relationship started. Max worked at a small company in the apparel industry. For a moment, I thought it was a company similar to my father's, but I quickly dismissed the thought. Max's family was the opposite of mine, with only his mother around, but he didn't discuss the reason and I didn't ask. One day, Max said to me, "I'd like to meet your father, Emily." I had been emailing my father several times since I left home, but I had no intention of going back home yet, so I didn't want to meet him. "I'll think about it. But I would like to meet your mom, Max." "Sure, when?" "Even today is fine, if you want." "Really, today is fine?" "Then I should buy some kind of gift." "Yeah, my mom loves that kind of thing." As I found out later, my MIL didn't just love that kind of thing, she got very cranky if I didn't bring those kind of things for her. On the way to Max's house, I bought a cake at a bakery. Upon arrival at Max's house, my MIL was waiting for us at the front door. When I asked Max why his mother was there, he told me he had sent her a message from the bakery. My MIL stared at me and asked, "And your name is?" I'm Emily." "Nice to meet you. What do you do for a living?" "I'm currently unemployed, but I plan to work soon." "Oh, so you're just idling about. How nice it must be to be a rich young lady." "I'm not rich. That's why I want to work." "You don't need to talk back. What do your parents do?" "My mother passed away when I was young. My father works at a company." Max, who had been watching my conversation with his mother from the side, said, "How long are you two going to talk here? Let's go inside." "Right. By the way, Max, did she bring anything? Surely she didn't come empty-handed?" In a rush, I handed my MIL the paper bag containing the cake. This isn't much, but..." Grabbing the bag almost violently from my hand, she peered inside and commented, "I didn't really need anything, but I guess I'll take it." In the few minutes I had spent talking to my MIL, I had grown to despise her. And I felt sorry for anyone who had to call such a person Mael. Entering the living room, my MIL bombarded me with questions and I gave her only bland answers. Regardless, she continued to interrogate me relentlessly, almost as if I were a criminal suspect. Exhausted by the barrage of one-sided questions, I told Max the moment her line of questioning eased. "Max, I think I should go soon." At that, my MIL's face turned red with anger. "Do you really hate being with me that much? You've been giving half-hearted replies to my questions this whole time." "Mom, please, calm down." "Max, why on earth did you bring such a rude woman here? There must be better women out there." I snapped back at her. "What about me is rude, exactly? If there's something I should improve, then tell me so I can work on it." That seemed to incense my MIL even further. "You're quite cheeky, aren't you? All you have to do is answer my questions." "I've been answering everything you've asked." "You dislike me, don't you? I can see it in your face." I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't. "I'm just tired and would like to go home." "Well, aren't you audacious? I wonder what kind of education your parents gave you. They mustn't have been good parents. I would love to see what they look like." Hearing her badmouth my parents, I was overwhelmed with sadness and began to cry. "Oh dear, now you're crying for sympathy. If you want to go home so badly, then go. It will be a breath of fresh air. Also, I'm going to feed this cake you brought to my dog, Charlie. But Charlie is quite a pampered pooch, so he might not eat such a cheap cake." Laughing, my MIL pointed at the cake I had bought. "Mom, enough is enough. Max, You really have no eye for women. Max frowned at his mother's comment and retorted. Why are you always so argumentative? Can't you act more mature for once? Max shot back, causing his mother to lose her energy instantly. All I want is a good wife for you, Max. I get that, but I'm an adult too, you know. I'm not a kid anymore, so I can handle my own stuff. Hearing Max's words, his mother's eyes filled with tears, and she left the room. With a teary face, I decided to leave too, but Max followed me and apologized. Emily, I'm sorry for all the harsh words my mom said. She must be just jealous thinking that she's losing me to you. I'll talk to her about this, okay? Please don't let this discourage you from coming again. I'm really hurt by what your mother said about my parents, Max. I don't want to see your mother again. The moment I said that, a wave of sadness overwhelmed me, and I burst into tears, throwing myself into Max's arms. Max held me close and after a while, suggested, How about we go somewhere now? Barely nodding, I left the house with Max. Since Max didn't have a car, we took the train and got off at a station by the beach. We sat on a bench on the sandy beach, staring at the sea for a long time. 2 months passed since then. I found out that I was pregnant. When I consulted Max about it, he proposed. Let's get married. We don't have to have a ceremony, but we'll make it official. We can live in my house, okay? I don't make much at my job, so I can't afford to rent an apartment. I'll make sure to talk to my mom about not saying unnecessary things to you, Emily. Living with his mother wasn't ideal for me, but there was no other place to live. Okay, I'll try my best to get along with your mother. Thus, I ended up living with my MIL. Because I was getting married, I went back home to tell my father about it. He looked delighted when he saw me. It's good to see you looking well. I know we've been in touch, but it's been a while since I last saw you. I'm sorry, Dad. I have something important to tell you. My father's expression changed immediately. I told him about my encounter with Max, my pregnancy, and our plan to get married. My father listened silently. When I finished, he simply said, Well, congratulations. Can't wait to meet my grandchild. His smile looked forced. Dad, thank you. I'm sorry for bringing such sorrow as a daughter, I said as tears flowed down my face. My dad was also crying. I expected him to be angry, but his gentle words hurt me even more. I ended up moving into my MIL's house. Lisa, who had been taking care of me ever since I left my home, said to me, You better show me your cute baby's face soon. Yeah, of course. And you should get married soon, too. I want to get married soon too, but he just won't make up his mind. But I think it'll work out somehow. Let's go out for dinner together again. I planned to move on Sunday, but my MIL said it was a bad luck day, so I changed it to Saturday. The move was completed safely on Saturday morning. While the movers were carrying my belongings, my MIL just stood there, watching them. She was repeatedly told by the movers to step back because it was dangerous, but she wouldn't move. When the move was over, my MIL called me over and said, You didn't give them what they're supposed to get, right? I didn't understand. Huh? It seemed she misunderstood me pretending not to know, and she went away and handed something to the leader of the movers. Seeing that, I understood what she was saying but when she came back to me, she said, Emily dear, it seemed like you didn't want to part with your money, so I gave it for you. Of course, you'll pay me back later. She then told me an absurd amount of money. It was way beyond what was generally considered reasonable, so I said, You gave them that much? Oh dear, Was that bad? It's not bad, but I think the amount was a little too much. It's the thought that counts in these situations. If you skimp, you'll be cursed. I'm not saying I'm skimping. I didn't say anything more because I knew it would lead to another argument. My MIL had this face saying, "I'm right no matter what you say." That's when Max showed up and said to my MIL, "Mom, what's up?" "What did you say to Emily?" "Just nothing." My MIL replied succinctly, then walked off. "You okay?" "I told her not to mess with you, you know." "Thanks." Deciding not to mention to Max that I almost had another argument with my MIL. I knew if I did, he might mention it to her, causing her to grow even more hostile towards me. After moving in, my MIL barely spoke to me, obviously avoiding me. There were even weeks where she wouldn't utter a word to me, and those days were bliss. One day, Max brought home some work documents in an envelope. It was marked with a company name, Star Textiles Inc., and that made me gasp. That was a name I had heard many times during my time working for my dad's company. They were one of our subcontractors. I asked Max, "Is this your company's envelope?" "Yeah, why?" "I was just wondering. I just realized that I didn't know much about your company." I didn't tell him that his company was a subcontractor to my father's. For some reason, I felt it was better not to say anything. "Well, we're just a small subcontractor. If our parent company decided to drop us, we'd go bankrupt instantly and all the employees would lose their jobs." Max laughed with his wistful look. About a month later, Max started coming home late from work. He also seemed down, so I asked him, "You've been coming home late recently. Is something wrong? You don't seem yourself." He admitted and said, "The company's in trouble." "What, like going bankrupt?" Max nodded. "The parent company suddenly decided to cut our orders by half. Now, our boss is begging them every day to continue business as usual. We're also looking for new clients, but if neither of those things work out, we're going bankrupt." As I listened to Max's story, I thought about asking my dad to help Max's company. But my father is strict about his work, so he would never help a business partner out of personal feelings. For some reason, the number of business partners must have been halved. I told him that my father's company is the parent company of Max's. Max was surprised at first, but then told me with a twinkle in his eyes, "Emily, please. Beg your father not to reduce his business with us." "I'm sorry, Max. My father is strict in business. He would never make such a decision based on personal matters. Could you at least try, Emily? It won't help." As I said this, Max got down on his knees before me. "Please, I beg you." "Stop it, Max, don't do this. I'll talk to my father, but I know it won't make a difference." As Max raised his head, tears of relief streamed down his face. That night, I called my father and explained Max's desperate plea. "So, the company Max works for is Star Textiles. I guess I have to help them then." I was surprised. I had expected my father, with his strict business mindset, to refuse outright. "But I have two conditions. First, I will continue to do business with Star Textiles as before, but I want Max to leave that company and work for mine. Second, you and Max will move in with me. Is that acceptable?" "So, you're saying Max should transfer to your company?" "I'll talk to him about that." "But why do you want us to live with you?" My father answered, sounding a bit uncomfortable. "I just want my daughter close by." "Okay." But why did you decide to reduce your dealings with Star Textiles in the first place? A new company approached us with a very attractive proposal, so we decided to do business with them. But after some research, we found that they have a history of breaking promises, so we were planning to call off the deal. So, even if I hadn't asked, Star Textiles would have been fine? Maybe. My father laughed, and I couldn't help but laugh too. After hanging up, I immediately relayed the conditions my father had proposed to Max. He was relieved that Star Textiles was no longer in jeopardy, but he seemed hesitant about moving to my father's company. It's hard for me to consider working for your father's company, Emily. I've always worked hard at Star Textiles, and I have a lot of good colleagues. I'll tell my father what you said. I called my father again, and when I relayed what Max had said, my father responded. He indeed said that, huh? He's a responsible, good man. Got it. He can keep doing his best at Star Textiles. But I'm not backing down about you guys moving into my house. Hee, understood. After the phone call, Max was overjoyed when I told him what my dad had said. I told Max, just remember, don't let your mother know about my father's company. If she finds out, she'll start nagging again. Right, got it. Several weeks later, I decided to go back home for the birth of our child. Even though it's just my father and elderly grandmother at home, it's way better than being taken care of by my MIL. I waited until my MIL was having her afternoon tea in the living room, and I approached her. MIL, about my childbirth, I've decided to go back home. It's just my dad and my grandmother, but my grandma is still very active and full of energy. When I said this, my MIL looked at me with hateful eyes and said, by all means, go back. I don't want to see your face. I didn't feel anything when my MIL said this, as I had anticipated it. You won't have to see me anymore, so rest easy. What? I mean, I won't be coming back here anymore. And soon, Max will be moving to my parents' house as well. What are you talking about? Max is too busy with work to move. It's okay now. At that moment, Max came in and said to his mother, Mom, my company is going to be okay now. Emily helped me. What are you talking about? Emily's dad is the owner of my company's parent company. What? Hearing this, my MIL raised her voice and stared at me for a while before saying, Emily, I had no idea you were the daughter of the owner of the parent company of Max's. I've been very rude to you up until now. My MIL bowed deeply. It's okay now. May I ask you for a favor? I'd like to live together at your parents' house as well. Mom, no. You can stay here. Yeah, I don't want to live with you, MIL. I'd be reminded of all the things you've said to me up until now. I won't say anything else, please, I beg you. My MIL said with tears in her eyes. I know it seems cold, but that's not possible. Then, my MIL got on her knees, bowed her head to the floor, and pleaded. Please, I don't want to live without Max. Please. No, I can't. Mom, stop it. If you had been kind to Emily before, we could have lived together. But your past behavior has led to this. Give it up. I told my MIL, who continued to shed tears on the floor. Well, MIL, you brought this on yourself. Half a year later, Max, our newborn daughter Kay, and I visited my MIL's house. However, the house was void of any human presence, and the air was chillingly cold. Max was calling out loudly to his mother, but there was no response. Max, did you mention we were coming over? No, I thought it'd be a surprise. I wonder where she is. Just then, my MIL, who had become severely emaciated, came out of the bathroom. Even upon seeing us, she did not change her expression. The kitchen was piled high with remnants of instant noodles and dirty dishes were left stacked. "Mom, are you okay?" My MIL glanced at Max, but said nothing. "MIL, we brought your favorite cake." As I held out the cake, my MIL rushed towards me, snatched the cake, and began devouring it immediately. I repeated what I had said before. "Well, MIL, you brought this on yourself." My name is Darcy. I currently live in a single-family home with my husband Carlos and our daughter Nikki. Carlos and I met back in college, and we instantly clicked. I was in the design department, and he was studying law. We happened to be in the same club. After graduating, I took a job at a design firm and was doing what I loved. Carlos and I dated for a few years and got married in our early 20s. I continued to work during my early pregnancy, but once Nikki was born, I decided to focus on raising her. Carlos and others encouraged me to prioritize parenting, so now I work from home. By the way, Carlos passed the bar exam after college and is now working as a lawyer. "Mommy, I'm going to play with my friends. Be back before it gets dark." "Okay." Life's pretty amazing, living with a loving husband and an adorable daughter while doing the design work I love. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. I was out shopping a bit far from home, when I saw my mother-in-law, Christine, struggling with some heavy bags. I couldn't help but approach her. "Mother-in-law." "Oh, Darcy, what a coincidence." Christine smiled warmly at me. Since it had been a while, I felt happy to see her and suggested, "How about some tea?" "I'd love to, but I'm in a hurry." "Oh, I see. My apologies." "It's fine. Let's catch up over tea next time." "Then let me at least help you get these bags home. They look really heavy." After some convincing, I loaded her bags into the back seat of my car. They were pretty heavy, and carrying two of them seemed like a task. Christine said, "I'm sorry, and thank you," with a smile, so I felt reassured that being a bit assertive was okay. Plus, there was something I had been wanting to talk to her about. We chatted about this and that as I drove her home. It takes about 3 hours and 30 minutes to drive to our in-laws' place, so we can't visit frequently. However, we do make it a point to visit for New Year celebrations, so I know the way. "Weren't you struggling carrying all this by yourself?" I decided to ask about something that had been bothering me on the way. In one of the bags my mother-in-law was carrying, there were groceries. In the other, there were daily necessities and cosmetics. Items clearly geared toward a younger demographic rather than what she'd typically use. "Well, they're essentials. I ended up buying a lot." Her expression seemed a bit down. I didn't pry any further and drove us to her home. "Darcy, thank you so much. You've been a huge help. This is far enough." "I can take the bags to the entrance." "Oh, you don't have to." When my mother-in-law opened the door, I placed the bags at the entrance. Just then, I heard a harsh voice. "Finally, you're back. What took so long, mother-in-law?" The voice belonged to my sister-in-law, Caddy. She seemed surprised to see me, and her words trailed off. I was equally surprised to see Caddy and found myself frozen in place. My mother-in-law looked flustered as she assessed the situation. "Sister-in-law, long time no see. How have you been?" Fine. It's been a while for you too, Caddy." Saying that, I return a smile to Caddy. I hold back a sigh as I look at her. She clearly looks like she's just woken up. She's holding her mobile phone in one hand. Her incomplete sentence alone was enough to raise suspicions. I'm sorry for the sudden visit. I happened to see mother-in-law while I was shopping nearby. She looked like she was struggling with the bags, so I came along. I see. I just got back from work this morning. I'm a mess, sorry. Thank you for helping mother-in-law. I'll take it from here. Caddy quickly grabbed the bags and took them inside. In a soft voice, I asked mother-in-law, "Is everything all right living with Caddy and the family?" Mother-in-law simply smiled and nodded. Thanks for your concern, Darcy. I'm fine. Sorry, I can't even offer you tea. No worries. It was nice to catch up. I'll visit again. Without pressing mother-in-law further, I left. Still, I couldn't simply ignore the situation I'd just witnessed. Originally, mother-in-law was supposed to live with us, but after my father-in-law passed away over a decade ago, my brother-in-law Brett said, "We'll live in the family home and take care of Mom." Even Carlos, my husband, was initially concerned. I felt uneasy about the situation, so I initiated a discussion, but it didn't go well. Carlos is busy with work, right? And he has irregular days off. I work close by, and Caddy's parents live nearby too. But still. Don't worry. I was a troublemaker back in the day, and I haven't done much for Mom, you know? I want to repay her. All right. Given what was said, Carlos couldn't really argue. In the end, with my mother-in-law's consent, my brother-in-law and his wife moved into her house. Today, I shared what happened with Carlos. Really? That's concerning. I'm not sure, but it makes me a little worried. Let's give Brett a call. After hearing my concerns, Carlos decided to call Brett. Hello? Carlos, what's up? Hey, it's been a while. Just checking in on you. I'm doing fine. After exchanging pleasantries, Carlos began to move the conversation forward. Calls usually led to discussions about how great things were between him and Caddy, and this was no exception. Good to hear you're doing well. Yep. We're taking an extended vacation next week. What about Mom? Is she coming? Oh, Mom said we should go just the two of us. Carlos and I exchanged looks. Given my mother-in-law's personality, this was no surprise. But we did notice Brett hesitating for a moment. In that case, let's have Mom stay with us during that time. What? At Carlos's words, Brett raised a surprised voice, and I looked up. Carlos, who smiled at me, nodded slightly and continued. We haven't seen Mom in a while, and I think Nikki will be thrilled. I'll get in touch with Mom. So, it's settled. Hey, wait! Carlos cut off the call before Brett could finish. Carlos exhaled deeply and looked at me with a serious face. We had stumbled upon an opportunity to discuss my mother-in-law. Following that, Carlos promptly arranged the dates with Brett. I coordinated with my mother-in-law, and she agreed to stay with us for about a week. Granny's coming today? Yes, isn't it exciting? Yeah. Nikki loves Granny. Nikki was ecstatic that her grandmother would be staying over. A few days later, my mother-in-law arrived at our home with minimal luggage. As soon as she entered, she looked relieved and bowed her head. I'm sorry for intruding for a whole week. Don't worry about it, you're more than welcome. Nikki has been looking forward to this, so please make yourself at home. And so, we spent a week together with my mother-in-law. However, I felt uneasy about my mother-in-law's actions from day one. Before her arrival, I cleaned up the home office I usually use for work to make space for her. When I showed her the room, she immediately said, "Oh, you've prepared such a room for me. I feel bad." I'd be okay just with a corner. No worries. Please, feel free to use the room. I only use it for work anyway. I convinced her to use it, but she still seemed apologetic. Also, with the kids off school today, I was planning to make lunch for the three of us when she said, "Let me cook." Can I use the fridge? She kept insisting on doing household chores even though I wanted her to relax. Gratefully, I managed to get her to unwind in the living room by having Nikki play with Granny. Additionally, she would say things like, "Oh, don't go to the trouble of snacks for me. I'm not worth it, or I'm fine with whatever's left over. Cold food is enough for me," as if she's an outsider rather than family. She used to be much more vibrant. It was painful to see her belittling herself like this. When Carlos came home while Nikki and mother-in-law were chatting, I filled him in on how she was acting. "I see. Thanks for letting me know. I wish she would value herself more. Let's keep an eye on her. It's only the first day." Right. And just when it was getting late and we were about to go to sleep, my mother-in-law said, "I guess I'll borrow this spot for a bit." Carlos and I were at a loss for words at her action. She was trying to lie down and sleep on the basement floor. "Mom." Carlos was speechless. I said as calmly as possible, "Mother-in-law, please consider this your room until you leave. Use a comforter so you don't catch a cold." "But won't that be a bother?" "Absolutely not. We want you to be comfortable and enjoy your stay here." I looked her straight in the eye, trying to convey my sincerity. From her behavior, it was obvious what kind of life she's had with her own family. When I smiled warmly, mother-in-law's eyes filled with tears and she finally broke down. "It's been 10 years since I've slept in such a warm place. Thank you." "What?" My mind reeled from what I'd just heard. Carlos's voice was several octaves lower, filled with disbelief. "Hey Mom, tell us the truth. Are you getting along with Brett and the others? How's life been?" Mother-in-law chuckled awkwardly before speaking. "Well, getting along might be stretching it. But I have to make do, right? I mean, if they ditched me, I wouldn't know how to fend for myself at this age." Slowly, mother-in-law began to share the grim reality of her life with us. Turns out, it was much worse than we could have ever imagined. She was handling all the housework in that home. Whenever Caddy was a little unhappy, she would raise her voice at her. All the shopping responsibilities were left to mother-in-law. She would buy whatever they needed. Moreover, mother-in-law was shouldering most of the living expenses. Clearly, her son-in-law and his wife had ulterior motives when suggesting they move in together, mainly to exploit mother-in-law's finances. Mother-in-law would only eat after the two of them were done, usually in the basement. The basement didn't even have heating, so she was freezing during the winter months. "It's been a long time since I've had a meal like today's. I was always alone, you know." "What? Are you serious?" The reason mother-in-law wanted to sleep in the basement was that it had become the norm for her at her previous home. Both Carlos and I were at a loss for words. Initially, when Brett and Caddy moved in, they were kind to her. At first, mother-in-law was happy and thought it was a good idea to live with them. However, as the years went by, their behavior changed drastically. Initially, Caddy used to cook, and Brett would help with other chores. "I'm so tired." "Brett, you work so hard. Let me take care of things today. You should rest." "Really? Thanks, Mom." That was probably the beginning. "Mother-in-law, I'm really tired today." "Oh, sorry, Caddy. I have plans with the neighbors today." "What? You're prioritizing them over me?" "Oh, I apologize, that's selfish of me. No, that's not it. Don't worry, I'll prepare dinner when I get back. This is my room, and this is Brett's room. Slowly but surely, they began to change how they treated mother-in-law, manipulating her more and more. Eventually, she found herself taking on almost all of the housework and contributing financially as well. Initially, she was using what used to be father-in-law's study as her room. It was a well-equipped space with a bed and other furnishings. She was delighted to be able to use such a cherished space as her own room. Even the study wasn't safe from Caddy's reach. One day, Caddy suggested, "Let's renovate this old study." "Hold on, Caddy. This is my husband's cherished study. Can we please leave it as is? I'm just thinking of your well-being, mother-in-law. Why do you have to make me look like the bad guy?" "I'm sorry, but I like it the way it is." "Really? This room is outdated. It looks worthless." With that, Caddy reached for a piece of glasswork. That was a music box made of glass, a favorite of my late father-in-law. He bought it during a trip they took together. It was something he treasured. But Caddy deliberately dropped it. "Oops, my bad. That wasn't on purpose." Oh. Wow, the glass is shattered everywhere. It's so dangerous. What a waste to keep this room the same, especially with all this junk. "Please, Dee, don't touch anything else." "Who do you think you're talking to?" "Fine, I'll leave the study alone, but from now on, you take care of everything in the house. And with all this junk, it's too dangerous for you to sleep here. You should sleep in the basement." "What? Any complaints?" In the end, mother-in-law agreed and had to sleep in the basement. I felt like passing out, hearing all these shocking stories. At the same time, I was angry with myself for not noticing sooner. "I'm sorry, Mom. How could I not have realized?" "Don't blame yourself. I was hiding it, too. Isn't it pathetic?" The reason we never noticed was also because of a scheme by brother-in-law and his wife. Mother-in-law was only given a room when relatives gathered at her house. But the room was empty, no bed, no furniture. And if she dared to speak up, they threatened to demolish her study. They were only nice to her when people were around. We didn't notice because of that. If mother-in-law and I hadn't crossed paths that day, this might have continued even longer. The thought sends shivers down my spine. I always wanted to discuss this with you. But that study and that house are full of memories with my husband. Tears flowed freely from mother-in-law, and I couldn't stop my own. Our precious mother-in-law had endured this life for over a decade. I can't even imagine how tough it's been for her. Why would her own family do this? They're not human. I shouted and hugged mother-in-law tightly. Darcy, I'm sorry. I need to step out for a bit. After we had cried together, Carlos gently rubbed my back and spoke softly. Don't worry, Darcy and Mom. I'll handle this. Please take care of Mom, Darcy. I nodded quietly. Got it. Leave mother-in-law to me. Carlos. I hugged our concerned-looking mother-in-law again, stroking her back to comfort her. Then I turned to Carlos and said firmly, Go teach those awful people a lesson. Of course. Carlos chuckled and nodded, then left the house. Later, Carlos called to say he wouldn't be back until tomorrow evening. I shared the news with mother-in-law, and we all drank warm milk, trying to lighten the mood with some good stories. Nikki, who had heard the commotion and looked worried, joined us. I wanted to override at least some of the bad memories. Usually, I'd remind Nikki not to stay up late, but since tomorrow was a day off, the three of us enjoyed chatting till we were content. All right, that's enough for today. Mother-in-law, would you like to go shopping with us tomorrow? Huh? We can buy whatever you want and eat delicious food. There's a cute dessert place that Nikki loves. Why don't we enjoy a relaxed day, just the three of us? At my words, mother-in-law's eyes filled with tears again. She nodded slowly, repeating thank you, over and over. That night, we spread an air mattress in the living room and slept closely together, with mother-in-law in the middle. The next morning, mother-in-law greeted us with the same smile she often showed when father-in-law was alive. Good morning. And just as promised, we all had a fun shopping day. In the evening, we got a message from Carlos saying he had returned home, so we headed back as well. Before entering the house, I had one more thing to say to mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, we are on your side. Whatever is hurting you, just let it out here. We will always be by your side. And me too. I'm on Granny's side as well. Mother-in-law nodded silently to our words. Welcome home. Sorry for leaving the house to you. We're back. Everything okay? Yeah, no issues here. Carlos greeted us with a warm smile. I had Nikki and mother-in-law wait in my home office. Walking into the living room, my eyes widened at the sight of my brother-in-law and his wife sitting on the floor. Their hands, resting on their knees, were trembling slightly. Upon seeing me, they greeted me in a soft voice, their faces filled with apprehension. What happened? My inner voice showed plainly on my face, which I turned to Carlos. Still smiling, he said, I haven't done anything, yet. His use of yet made even me tense up, expecting something dramatic to happen. So, to cut to the chase, starting today, Mom will be living with us, Carlos continued. I felt relieved at those words. Carlos continued to speak to me as I nodded. So, Brett, do you fully grasp what you've put Mom through? And you too, Caddy. Do you understand what you've done to someone else's mother in their own home? I can't say it's entirely your fault. We didn't notice it either, but you have to take responsibility for your actions. After all, you're supposed to be mature adults. Carlos spoke vehemently. It was the first time I'd ever seen the usually gentle and calm Carlos so angry. I honestly dislike bringing up work matters at home, but this time, I'm speaking as Ms. Christine's attorney, not as family. His voice was friendly but low and icy. My brother-in-law and his wife meekly responded, yes. And after several hours of discussion, numerous decisions were made. First, my brother-in-law and his wife would no longer be living with us. They would have to return all the money they had been extracting from mother-in-law, plus pay additional compensation. Having decided to respect mother-in-law's emotional attachment to her study and her own home, brother-in-law and his wife moved out. We banned them from ever setting foot in mother-in-law's home again. Upon hearing the decision, mother-in-law gave a troubled smile. So, we are family, right? Asking for damages is a bit much, don't you think? No, this is a gesture from our son Brett to Ms. Christine, right? Carlos's words left Brett nodding so fervently he looked like he might lose his head. Yes, yes. I'm truly sorry for everything. Please accept this as our sentiment. Brett seemed so diminished that you'd wonder what on earth had happened. After the conversation, Carlos took a deep breath and turned to mother-in-law. So, please accept this, Mom. Let's put an end to this. Brett and his wife will never forget what they've done and make sure it doesn't happen again. Both of them nodded in silence. Seeing this, Carlos smiled gently and continued in a low voice. Well, it will never happen again, right? Yes, yes, yes. Never again. Absolutely. And so the conversation ended. Within a few months, we had received the damages that Carlos had arranged from the brother-in-law and his wife. Mother-in-law wanted to give it to us, saying it was because we had helped her, but we refused. She insisted, so we agreed to accept a little each month for groceries, and let mother-in-law use the rest. Carlos, what did you say to Brett and his wife? I was curious about that day, so I asked him when we were alone. Carlos scratched his head even though it wasn't itchy. Don't lose faith in me, okay? Why would I? You helped mother-in-law and made them regret their actions. Actually, Carlos had contacted Brett immediately after hearing what had happened. It's strange for me to say, but I rarely get angry. But when I do, people say I'm scary. I think I really scared him when I called. He told me where he was right away. Although a bit distant, he drove straight to the destination. Upon arriving, he immediately questioned the two. I couldn't let it go. Especially because he's my brother, and I had trusted him with Mom. I didn't know the details, but considering how scared they both looked, Carlos must have been terrifying when angry. On their way out, they bowed deeply, saying, "We're really sorry." Well, mother-in-law seems happy, and so does Nikki. I'm happy too. Thank you for standing up for us, Carlos. Darcy, I'll continue to do my best for our family. Even after everything, it's good to know we can still be a happy family. I'm grateful for my dependable husband and for mother-in-law, who chose to rely on us. From now on, I intend to make up for the hardships by being a dutiful daughter-in-law and doing my best in every way.